Okay.
Okay. So the first public hearing is
Hi.
postponed until next month.
Thanks.
Okay, the second public hearing is Venezia and Associates for John and Kelly Alberman, property owners at 3473 Lakeview Lane, requesting area variances for an addition to an existing residence. Front setback of 18.75 feet when 50 feet is required. The variance of 31.25 feet is requested. Building coverage of 12.6% variance, 37.6 proposed when 25% is maximum. Lot coverage of 17.4% variance, 57.4% is proposed, and 40% is maximum. You're all here? Yeah. Good.
Mike, you need to mute James' iPhone. There you go. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Robert Wolf with Wolf Architecture. Our offices are in Honeyway Falls. And I'm the architect representing Jack and Kelly Elderman for this project. And this is Erin Joyce. She's with Venezia and Associates, and she'll be talking about some of the site design. So I'm the architect and she's the site civil designer. The first exhibit we have, well, first of all, before I start into this, I just want to thank you guys for being here. I know you're here on your own time at night, and working through these IT issues are never fun. So thank you for sticking it out, and thank you for your service. Appreciate the fact that you're conscious of the built environment. We're all here, I think, for that same purpose. The first exhibit we have up here is an endorsement from the next door neighbor immediately to the north. I don't know if I can read it exactly, but he's basically writing, endorsing it, and the last sentence is, "We do not believe they could accomplish their project without the requested variances and the conditions of their request, thank you, are not self-imposed." And I think we've put together a package that we think will support that statement. If you could go on to the next page, please. This is just an evolution of our design. We came in on the 14th. We requested 5 variances with the lot coverage, the percentage, and the relief requested noted. Then we came back in December with 2 less variances per your request, trying to make this as compliant as we possibly can. And the lot coverage and relief requested was still at 17.4. Today, we're here with the 3 variances, and in recent conversations with the clients, we've been able to reduce the lot coverage relief that we request from 17.4 down to 13.4%. And this reduction, the asterisk at the bottom, the reduction in lot coverage was achieved by slimming down the driveway to the greatest extent possible and by eliminating the walkway from the side door to the lakefront. And we really got to a point in trying to reduce the lot coverage where any further reductions will change the project materially for the Alderman. So we feel like we've cut this thing as close to the bone as we can, per your request. The next slide, please. And if you want to zoom out, this is where Erin comes in, and she can talk you through the changes that we made to try to get this lot coverage as low as possible.
Good evening, everyone. Erin Joyce with Joyce Consulting Group, working in collaboration with Venezia and Associates, the site civil engineer. So it might be helpful to zoom in to kind of the center of the proposed house footprint, just to kind of see, since the last time we had presented, we had taken a look at where we could further reduce lot coverage, and the Aldermans have decided to eliminate a portion of the walkway from the side of the house to the front of the house fronting the lake. So that would be removing approximately 150 square feet of existing walkway. And then we're actually going to narrow up the driveway a bit, all the way back to Lakeview Lane. We're going to shave a couple feet off the north side of the driveway and a little bit off the south side. So we're really just lining up the driveway with the very edge of the garage doors that are proposed. So we were able to reduce the driveway footprint a bit to further limit the lot coverage variance that we would be seeking.
Next slide, please. Yeah, if you can zoom in on this a little bit, we accomplished this thanks to, in large part, to Jack going down and really doing a lot of the dirty work. And we've got an appreciation for the research you guys have to do when a foil is placed. And Jack really got in and dug in. And what each one of these numbers represents is the number of variances that have been requested by the properties on Lakeview Lane over history. And so there are 17 properties on Lakeview Lane. 12 of them have requested variances. All of them include area variances. And on average, of the ones that requested variances, there was an average of 5 per property over time. For the subject property, 3473, there has been 2 variances granted in the past, and we're asking for 3 tonight. So that kinds of brings us up to the average of variances that are requested. And I think kind of the point of this slide is, on this road, the lots are relatively small, and for the way people want to live today, it just requires a little more building and lot coverage that are currently allowed in the code. Next slide, please. And I guess before we get into this, Aaron, do you want to talk a little bit about the water runoff mitigation? Because that's really one of the key issues when it comes to lot coverage. And so we feel like we've reduced it down as much as possible, and we have strategies in mind to make sure that the water runoff is dealt with on this property and it doesn't affect the neighboring properties.
Yeah, I would.
Okay. Yeah, that's our strategy at this point, is to deal with the water on the site and make sure it doesn't impact the neighboring properties. Do you want to talk about this?
So at the last zoning board meeting that we were at, I think a couple of the members had talked about what some of the other properties along in this area looked like as far as lot coverage. So what we looked at, we tried to identify, we did identify 4 similar lots. Now, we used the Encore mapping system to look at what the lot coverages may be close to. And I only say that because, this is something that is publicly available and any member could do that. So hesitate to forward something that might be, pointing out non-compliances on other properties. So just to keep that in mind, we tried to use very publicly available data. So what all I did here was what we provided. We calced areas and then just took a screenshot from Encore and provided that. But what we were trying to kind of identify is 4 similarly sized parcels on Lakeview Lane, and then identified a relative size of building coverage. So later on, we'll see how the 4 lots we selected kind of compare to the lot we're discussing this evening. But what we did is we identified the building coverage as we could approximate it, and then also the driveway, walkways, and lakeside patio hardscapes, just to kind of give a sense for what sort of coverages were in the neighborhood. And we did this because I think when we were going back through to look at some of the historical variances granted, it's really hard to kind of compare those variances granted just because it's over, a couple decades, and there's different ways the numbers are represented as far as lot coverage goes. So we felt like this was at least a better snapshot where we were kind of showing an equal comparison of lot coverages, what's there on other properties in the neighborhood and what our property looks like. So what we did was we had looked at 4 separate parcels, and I don't know if you want to, we can kind of just scroll through because we summarized what we found when we looked through them, but we picked again 4 properties, identified the buildings and then the patio spaces, and identified the building coverage percentage and the lot coverage percentage. Now, I would say these percentages are probably plus or minus 1 or 2%. So again, This should really just be kind of like an approximate comparison, just to kind of give you a sense of like how are these homes along this, in this neighborhood built out for lot coverage. So if you want to go down to the comparison chart here, just to kind of see how the property we're looking at, which is in red on the bottom, compares to the 4 that we looked at. The green line is the averages. So if you want to just zoom in so that we can see building area, lot coverage, and total lot size a little closer. So you can see the property we're looking at is a building area of just under 3,000 square feet. It's not the biggest building of the 4 that we looked at to compare it to. It's not the smallest, you know, it's within the average-ish size of homes in the area. And then when you look at lot coverages, again, it's right around the average of the other lot coverages we calced. And we do note that this lot, the one that we're looking at this evening for the Albermans, is one of the smaller lots. So we would expect a similar size building, similar lot coverage to actually have, you know, a little bit greater of a percentage, just because we're comparing it to one of the lots on the smaller size. So I think if anything, this is just kind of a demonstration that this is kind of along the lines of how this neighborhood is built out and how people are using their lots as far as building coverage and patio driveway lot coverage perspectives go. So I don't know if there's any additional commentary questions on this. I know that, or I think that this sort of analysis was maybe what the board was looking to maybe being helpful, but we have, you know, a little bit more data to talk about this in more depth, but I think this is kind of like the overview of the few properties that we looked at to compare.
Any questions on that from the board?
Can you remind us what is the existing non-conformance in this property?
If you go back to the site plan, it's listed on there. We can zoom in and
That's in the top right corner of the site plan.
yeah, go to the right and yeah, keep going a little bit. There we go. That's the chart.
So the existing non-conformance, the existing building coverage is 27.8, which is above the 25%. And then the lot coverage is currently 44.1, where 40 is required. So we have those two non-conformances.
Thank you.
Lot coverage you have there is after you reduce. Anything else you'd like to present?
Can we go back to that one chart that they had a minute ago? So the building area percentage, 37.6, that's what it will be, or that's what, so what is it now?
I think right now it's
27.8, I just wrote it down.
Thank you.
the numbers are like, you know, yeah, so it is 27.8, it will be 37.6.
So you technically, I mean, by this comparison, I mean, it looks like you guys are still over for the relief needed. Is that a correct assumption? There's nothing, like when you're saying building area relief needed?
Those were just comparisons to what like the other, so
Right,
we would need the 12.6, and then we were just kind of showing a comparison, you know, how much the others were over that 25%.
Right.
But again, it's hard to say how accurate our building areas are. So, you know, I think to compare it, it's kind of harder to say like if But that is what that represents.
And for me, the last column, the lot coverage relief needed, that's the real big deal as far as how much water we're gonna have to negotiate. And I think in that, we're in line with the second and the third one that Aaron analyzed, and much lower than the first one. We're higher than the fourth one, but when it comes to these four that we analyzed, we feel we're kind of right in the ballpark of other variances that have been granted.
What made you pick these four to compare against?
They were, I think one in particular was, I think, an address that a member had stated at the last meeting, and the other ones just were of similar size and seemed to be of similar lot coverage when they were looked at from aerial imagery. So we just had identified those four.
The total number of lots in this area is how many was
17. And so, yeah, you can kind of look at this as a special case. It's really in this little enclave that the parcels are relatively small, and that's why we saw so many variances have been granted in this area. Definitely a special case in regard to the entire lake.
It's the Fallbrook part of the west side. Actually, or Sandy
Right.
Beach of the west side.
It really is.
And I think another comment that was made at the last meeting, and just to echo it again, is there is that large piece of green space that the lots share partial ownership with, that is kind of forever green, forever wild. So I think that is kind of also a unique situation for these particular parcels where you have that dedicated, allocated green space. It just happens to be on the other side, and all together that they have that shared ownership of.
So it's really a unique case when you compare it to other places around the lake.
Could you see the site plan again, please? No way the house could be increased in size, but not as much.
Yeah, in order to fit the garage that's necessary and then the stair going into a basement, we really have constricted the house down as much as possible.
Yeah, so what we have right now is there's an outdoor, what's it called? We have built 4 doors, which is actually kind of, in the winter, they get all icy and you gotta shovel them off, because we have basically a half of basement on that side that has our hot water heater and stuff. So we have to spread that out. Really, that whole space that's there is really covered by the stairs going down to, we're adding a basement underneath the garage part. And it's really the stairs going down to the basement and the stairs going up to the top. So it's really, there's not much you can take away and still have a garage.
Anything else?
I'd like to go back to the chart. I appreciate, this approach to what you're doing, but I guess we're looking at the first thing your eye goes to is what's the high number and what's the low, and then sort of what's in between. With these. And when I look at building area percentage, you will be the top dog based on this comparison. And I just feel that this will, a chart, if it's used by others, which I think is very helpful, this gives impetus for other applicants to move towards your number. And how would you respond to that?
I guess I would just say I would be cautious to use this chart for anything other than just kind of a gut reaction. I mean, these building percentages could be off 1 or 2% at least in either direction, just because of the nature of the air. Like, we're just basically drawing area polylines around the imagery as we see it, where our percentages are based on an actual field survey. So while we have our square footages down to, a square foot, these ones could be down to, more of a deviation. I think we were trying to, one, provide the board with an analysis that was similar to what we were doing, just to kind of give like an overall view, but I think it is kind of, I wouldn't want to base, you wouldn't want to really base your decision on that sort of percentage analysis. I think even in the situations of all the individual addresses, they're all very unique circumstances to when a board would grant a variance or not for the individuals and their properties. So I would use it as kind of a, let's kind of see, it's easier to have numbers instead of just like eyeballing it, but I wouldn't really try to put too much into it just because of the unique nature of individual variances granted to owners for their hardships. And
So do you have misgivings about the chart you created? I'm confused because you said that, let's just say building area percentage, it could be off by 1 or 2%, but the 37.6, which you have, still puts your project, it extends, it's quite an increase. And I guess I could say the same thing about the next column. So dealing with the data and looking at it, I'm confused because these are your numbers, and so then we interpret or take a look at them. But now you're not sure, or you're saying we shouldn't put too much weight on these. I'm a little confused.
Well, I think Aaron is saying that when we develop these percentages, they are plus or minus a few percent. And I definitely acknowledge that the building area percentage, this project has a fairly larger building area percentage. But again, I think the really important number is the lot coverage, because that's what has to do with the water running off the site. And when you look at that, we're the 4th out of 5 that are listed there. And so I think that is important. And when it comes to the other 3 that have been granted variances that are legal now, we are right in the mean of that. And so in my opinion, that's the most important thing. And I can tell you as a professional, I wouldn't be up here endorsing this if I didn't personally believe that this was an improvement that's good for the environment and that it's something that we're all going to be proud of moving forward. I wouldn't have my name on this if I wasn't personally convinced. And what I really looked at was the lot coverage.
I don't think it's unreasonable to look at the lot size either. I mean, there's a big difference between if you're going to compare the top and the bottom there.
Yeah, and I think the fact that this is such a unique enclave protects the town against other people using this, because, you've already had 12 reach out for variances. That's 5 more on this street that might at some point come in, but it really doesn't apply to many other places outside of this unique little place. And so as a board member, I think you can feel okay with the fact that, sure, we're granting a variance here, but the lot coverage is right in line with what's been approved in the past. And there aren't going to be a lot of people that can say, hey, we live in this neighborhood, we have the same situation. And like Aaron said, there's this great forever wild area that, okay, it's not legally, it's not part of our legal conversation, but practically it makes a big difference that there's this big field to the west of everybody that's absorbing a lot of the water. So those are the parameters in my mind that make me feel comfortable endorsing this project.
I guess the thing that we deal with, well, in this development as well as a couple across the lake, there's people, having very small lots, but then kind of wanting to build their ideal home, and that doesn't always, is not always possible. I appreciate you presenting the state of the, I think that gives a context for us.
And I know there was a memo from Chris Jensen too. It said if it was, if it was gonna be approved, that the architect should be aware of the requirements for the fire separation distance. I don't know if you saw that.
Yes,
How long
that's,
was it?
that's the setback, and we've improved that, so
Okay.
we're not concerned about that.
That was a side setback.
Yes.
Is there anything else you'd like to present to the board?
I think we've really told you everything that we feel is relevant here.
Anyone, anyone at home? We have two people other than Bob. Anyone with any, would like to make any comments on this application?
So you know how to raise their hand or whatever.
You have Jane's iPhone and Wendy Euler. Either of those wish to comment? Guess not. Okay, anything more from the board?
Okay.
Do you have any objection to our closing the public hearing? After closing the public hearing, we have 62 days to make a decision. Obviously, our agenda isn't very long tonight, so I'm sure that we'll come to a decision tonight. You're welcome to stay for our discussion. Okay, with closing the public hearing, board. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. The last one had been removed, is that
Yes.
correct? Yeah. I think with the applicants here, we could go ahead and
Yeah.
discuss this. Bob, can you hear us still?
Yes,
Okay. Okay, any discussion?
I didn't look recently. Did the ECB ever post any comments on this one?
I looked, I was just.
Last time I looked, I didn't see any, but,
I didn't see it, no.
okay.
They didn't have,
ECB, there's ECB photo, there's ECB minutes.
Yeah.
But there's
the
nothing.
minutes say it's
Yeah, that's
ready
what I was,
for, yeah.
I was just,
Okay.
the MRB stuff. Yeah, I didn't see anything really good.
Comments?
All right, Dave, I know you have something to say, come on.
Well, I think the lot, size is a part of this. I know this is not any different than so many of these other places, but if you go through, is it substantial? Like, obviously the support of the neighbors, is it, I think it's somewhat disingenuous to ask people to go through the aggravation of coming up with this. This is 5 out of 17. Which I think is a fairly representative sample. I mean, I don't know how it was selected. It really doesn't make any difference, but
I think you said you selected it for the smaller ones, I think.
Trying
the
to
smaller
do a
ones.
comparison.
Yeah,
similar,
but it
like
is a
apples to
comparison, and
apples.
is it substantial, or is it within the, certainly it demonstrates it's within the character of the neighborhood. I realize, I mean, you've got it, the 37 is a problem, but I think if you go through the 5 issues as far as the variances go, I don't think they're out of line on this. That's my opinion.
I think the other thing which they mentioned, and it strictly, I guess, shouldn't have an effect, but that, Forever Wild area across the street, I think does have an effect. Large area that will remain undeveloped, and even though they don't own it, they have access to 113th or something.
Well, I mean, we've looked at a number of properties that have a forever wild right next door that does make a difference. It's a buffer if nothing else, and certainly is part of the water issue, so. I wish everybody would go through this chart thing.
But it's not just the water that we have an issue with. right?
No,
I mean,
no,
it's-
and I
there's a lot
understand,
of,
I
you know,
mean, the precedence is
right. It is gonna be precedence and, you know, for the building area percentage anyway, definitely.
Bob, do you have any comments?
I'm still stuck on the building area percentage and the relief needed. I appreciate that environmentally, you know, they're going to do the best they can to protect our resources. But I just feel that number is just, I don't know, it has a shock value to me. And it's, I can't get it out of my system, you know, that high a building area percentage. And perhaps the building area relief needed, but more so that 37.6.
People ready to vote?
Ready?
Mike, are you gonna be willing to call in a question here?
Okay, requesting area variances for an addition to an existing residence. Front setback of 18.75 feet, 31.25 feet proposed, and 50 feet is required. Building coverage of 12.6%, 37.6% proposed, and 25% is maximum. Lot coverage of 17.4%, 57.4% proposed, and 40% is maximum. Continued to February 21st, 2023. Shall the applicant be granted an 18.75 foot front setback variance? Shannon,
Yes.
Bob,
No,
Dave,
yes.
Kelly,
No,
Chip.
Yes.
Shall the applicant be granted a 12.6% building coverage variance? Shannon,
Yes.
Bob,
no,
Dave,
Yes,
Kelly,
no,
Chip.
Yes.
Shall the applicant be granted a 17.4% lot coverage variance? Shannon,
Yes.
Bob,
no,
Dave,
yes,
Kelly,
no.
Chip.
Yes. There's a simple majority approving it. This did not require county board. They did not have to look at it, so a simple majority would carry it. Okay, reasons. Okay, as depicted in descriptions and drawings presented at this meeting and received earlier, the benefit to the applicant does outweigh the detriment to the neighborhood or the community, therefore the variance is granted. Board's decision is based upon the facts as presented during the public hearing. I think reasons for the approval, I think granting the variance is in keeping with the character of the neighborhood as demonstrated by the applicant. I think it's a well substantial. I think the variances will not change the character of the neighborhood. Character of the neighborhood, I guess I'd have to say, is unique in itself with many small lots, multiple previous variances having been granted, and I think a large area of open space across to the west of the road.
You can also say it's already a pre-existing non-conforming.
Yeah. Already pre-existing non-conforming, the other thing that I think, which I appreciate, is I think the applicant went to did a lot of research, and I think also cut down the amount of variance that was originally applied for, and I think that is very helpful. Anything else?
Certainly supported the neighbors.
Oh,
Right, yeah, the support of the neighbors.
Support of the neighbors.
Yeah.
Presented.
I think that's it.
Okay. Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
So can I ask,
The variance.
I'm sorry. A community like this, where it is the community with the open space or whatever, should we ask the ordinance committee or something if there's a
Yeah.
way we can factor that open space? Oh, we have, okay, I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay. We have in the past, but they really haven't addressed it really for, I mean, it's kind of hard because I mean, it's not owned by,
And I understand that and they,
yeah.
and,
I think that can still be a reason for,
Yeah, but-
or, you know, a
right,
contributing
For
reason.
our
That's the
decision
benefit of
making.
Being a board member, you can determine in your own mind if it's.
Right,
if it
Right,
works,
right.
you know,
right. Because we had
I happen
actually
to think it
had,
does, so.
and we actually had an application a few years ago, if you remember, the guy actually wanted to count
Yeah.
extra property that technically was never gonna be
Yep.
used.
Yeah.
But we couldn't
He was gonna
calculate
drop
it, we
his
couldn't use
percentage
it.
way down by doing
Yeah,
that.
right,
And we
right.
didn't allow it.
We didn't allow it, but we took it into account in our own
Okay.
minds as a board, so
Okay.
that was kind of where we were at. So. By the way, hi, Mike, I'm Kelly.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Mike.
Trial by fire, right? And like,
Glad you're here tonight.
yeah. Good thing I had dug on speed dial.
Um, Okay, other things on the agenda. Oh, why was the Wade application?
That was in the
Wasn't ready?
Oh, okay.
Because that wasn't on the agenda that was emailed out.
Well, they took
was
it
on
off,
and
they
then
changed
Took it off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay, so this is the other one they want to,
Right, so now we have to continue it. What are we're gonna just continue to next month? The
No,
other
because it
one?
wasn't on the agenda, so. we
No, I
don't-
mean, the first case that we didn't hear.
yeah,
Yes,
We're just gonna.
Yeah.
continue.
yeah, we voted and agreed.
Okay.
any request for
I didn't know if I
rehearing?
was, oh, I was over there.
Okay, so referrals from the town or the town manager, ordinance committee. Okay, we have the minutes of the
Yes.
January 25th meeting came out. I made a couple minor changes.
And she sent
She
those over,
resent
yeah, yeah, I don't have any.
Everybody, you okay with that, Bob, with the minutes?
Yes, yep.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
They're approved it. And we need to approve the rules and regulations. or
Yes.
rules
Was there
of
anything
proceeding.
changed in that?
Yeah,
It was just something minor, right?
yeah. I assume they're gonna fix on that. Mike,
I thought it was.
They'll clarify that.
Yeah,
They.
I know, Dave.
Yeah, one of the things was,
Yeah, thanks, really? I don't know.
we
Some more
wanted
worldly
to put a time limit on, we did not reverse, modify, or annul original decision. When the original decision would remain in effect for 1 year. Time limit. Discuss that.
Another time limit, I mean, but. Because we do the year, right? Is that what you're saying, or what?
But they would have a year from when we
If we
looked.
oh, that kind of makes sense, so, right? I think that makes sense. I
The only
mean, if
thing-
we change a decision, it should be from the date of the decision, right? I think.
Mike, we were gonna say something about Zoom meetings.
Yes, you were.
Other than cancel
We are
them.
not doing Zoom meetings.
I think we were gonna have a sentence in there which basically said our Zoom procedures would follow those of the town.
Of the top, yeah,
I
exactly.
think it does say that in there, doesn't it? I thought that's what, well, we had talked about this.
That's what we
last-
talked about last time, adding, and I agree with
I
that.
thought I saw it
From
on,
the town board members.
Yeah,
Needs to go.
yeah,
I
exactly,
think it's okay for people to listen in that way,
yeah,
if you different, because I do the town board.
yeah.
But if there was-
Well, that's a good idea. I think more openness is better, but
Right, but as
this
far as
isn't working.
participating.
Well, when you show up with, yeah, and then you can't should be a better process.
I mean, it isn't like this is the first technical glitch we've had with
Right.
Zoom.
I know.
But I thought,
Well-
thought we had, in
Well,
fact, I
well.
thought I saw a copy
Well,
of this, it had
Think
something
about
about.
little
this.
fall.
This is the only copy that's-
Yeah, I
Yeah,
saw
you know.
know.
I know, right?
I know.
That's how I was like, well, poor guy.
Are people okay with approving this if it includes a
Yes.
statement
Yes.
regarding the meeting?
Yes.
Meaning we'll refer to the town board.
Bob, you okay?
Yes, I can't see you guys. This is like a radio play for me. I'm still looking at the chart from the last Apple.
Because you got the
Yeah, I
shared
got a
screen
haircut,
on. now. You can get rid of the shared screen now.
So we're not that much to look
I
at.
thought we were doing a favor for you, Bob.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Hey, did you take that picture, that background scene from my yard? I swear to God, that looks like you're. on
That's
my-
from Letchworth Park.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, I'm too ashamed of what's behind me. It's
Oh.
this is my rumpus room, so it is what it is.
There's
You
a
okay
big
with the
picture.
rules and procedures?
Yeah, I just but I would next time ask Dave not to wear the orange, though. It makes my eyes red. But that's a personal.
You look like a
Yeah,
floating
but
head.
we
I
won't
just
include
realized.
that in the
it.
rules and procedures. We don't have a dress code.
Blend in with the.
There you go. Look at, nobody sees Dave. Dave's not here.
All right, so we'll, all in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Anybody else have anything else they'd like to bring up?
I have a question.
Sure.
Yes.
And this is strictly hypothetical. But like some of the properties that like in Sandy Beach where you have someone, the pre-existing nonconformities. And yet they are interested in expanding or having a setback change on the other side. There are some of the properties that are literally right on the line.
Right.
Can you use, maybe it's coercion to deny a variance on one side when they're, especially if you're building a brand new place, to be able to continue that process and be allowed to put it on the same, right on the line because of the pre-existing non-conforming.
Yeah, but we've been, and that's just like, if you remember when Terrence was here, he was like, we don't care. I mean, we're trying to get rid of a lot of these pre-existing non-conformers, not here to make it bigger or make it more of a pre-existing non-conforming issue, But I know what you're saying. We've already granted a variance request, but I mean, there's got to be a line where you stop, right? I mean,
Well,
like,
yeah, I mean, at a certain point, and clearly that's why we have zoning and
Right.
setbacks. And granted, some of these things go back forever, and I understand that, but there has to be some way.
it's like that chart that had that big,
Mhm.
huge, there was one house that was ridiculous. I don't know when that was granted. That could have been done long before we were even around,
Yes.
So, yeah, but you don't wanna, that's why I had a problem with 37.
Well, another factoid, maybe Shannon would know this best because she's most recently trained. But I remember they would always say in the training, every case is a singleton, and that's the way. But then look at the evidence. Everything is about comparables. So we're supposed to on one hand look at something as a singleton, and especially when people have rare cases, whether it's topography or all kinds of other things, and I get that, but the big evidence of recently is comparables, and when you look at a certain neighborhood, it's almost like they live by their own rules in some of these neighborhoods, and my feeling is, based on when they were giving us the comparable stuff, was if somebody now is the lead dog and is set a higher number, that just gives the other people now ammunition to
Right.
to do the same thing and approach that number. So there's certainly gamesmanship involved, but the training about singletons is not showing up for me as much as more recently comparables.
Right. Well,
And part of that, what we're supposed to be looking at is, the question is this a hardship that's not self-created
Right.
or
Right.
something along those
Yeah,
lines?
we're forgetting
The-
some of those
the
other
fact
things.
that it's a small lot that's the lot you bought. You knew what
Right.
it was when you purchased it.
Right.
Or whatever, whether that was last year or 20 years ago, or, you know, you got it from your grandma, you knew what you were getting. A condition of the lot is something like you're talking about. You've got a hill you have to work around.
Right.
You've got a creek running through it
Right.
that you need to walk through or whatever. Those are the condition of the lot that makes this a unique thing where there's a
Exactly.
hardship. And I'm struggling here because I'm, you know, being new to this board-ish and new to Canandaigua in general, there is kind of a, I forget who said it, kind of a double standard. The folks on the lake
Mhm.
seem to be able to use the, well, my lot is small as an argument, and it's like, well, there's a reason I bought 40 acres. What was your reason to not? You
So
know?
I would say, I would counter that with, most times I'm more hard on the people that are on the lake.
Oh,
than I
I,
am on
and
the people
I'm
in the
not,
country.
I'm not denying that.
Whereas I know
yeah.
that people will never see that shed on their big, you know, or whatever the
Right.
case may be. But yeah, I see, I think what we forget sometimes is when they bring in these comparables, that there are extenuating circumstances most likely that went along with the variance grant.
But I think the
Begin with.
comparables are brought in because it gives you an
Right,
idea
it
what
does.
the character of the neighborhood.
Yep.
Sure.
We gotta weigh all of it, though. We should, if we knew what the circumstances were for the granted variances to begin with, that would be helpful, but we don't. And so.
Lately, I've been thinking that the message we send out is sort of like a traffic light.
Yeah.
If based on how we vote, it could be a red light, it could be an amber, like, hey, go ahead and take your chances if you're an applicant, or a green light, you know, based on something we've done. It will give people cause for an application because something else went through. So I really think that with these cases, we do send out a message, and we may get more applicants, or we may get less, depending upon, you know, how we vote.
No, I think you're right. I mean, I
I
think,
agree.
I wish there was a better process that we could remember or know what the extent, the circumstances were for some of the
Right.
stuff prior to, you know, like if you come in, you bring the house next door. I mean, just like you said, there could be a hill or a, you know, a ditch or whatever. the case may be.
There are no hills on this road.
No, it's all flat and it's all underwater, right? Just kidding. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard. I don't know. I get where you're going with it, Bob. I agree.
I liked it better that one night where we were all scratching our head about what is a stream when Terrence came back. You know, you remember that? We had photographs and everyone's scratching their head like, you know, what are we talking about? Is this, and it turned out it was a seasonal kind of thing, and you had to be there, you know, at the right time to get a picture of it.
One other thought on this one, I guess, probably not too late to end up in terms of reason for, one of the reasons they had knocked out one variance
Yeah,
on their
Reduced
original thing
it.
also, they been farther from the sideline.
yeah.
Agree, yeah.
So that was another thing which.
I was a little concerned with the higher numbers is all. I just didn't want to create precedent again,
I
you know.
hated being the deciding.
I know, I left it to you. I knew it. I knew
It's
it.
okay, I hated being first. So.
I know, I was like, oh, let's see, I'm gonna be the jerk. Usually it's Dave and I
Yeah,
being the
you-
jerk, you know, so.
Yeah. No, I would have voted differently if we were looking at 4 or 5 variances on this.
Right, oh, yeah.
But being down to 3, to me, it means a lot that they worked so hard to reduce.
And the water runoff is obviously a benefit, but, you know,
But no, that is,
at least there's that buffer land. at least, so.
this was a 10% increase in the non-conformity.
Right.
So it was non-conforming before, but this is another 10%
Mm.
more than what it was
Which is-
before. That's big.
Yeah, that is huge.
I do think that this board, when Chris was here, probably adhered
Helped.
more to the 5,
Yeah,
you know, let's just break it down and go through the
well,
the
it was
5
helpful
different.
when he was on. you
Yeah,
know.
I mean, it's a, there is a certain protocol and
He's,
lawyers.
is he still,
do, you
he's
know,
still our attorney?
But I think that that's another way to look at this. And some of these, when the numbers get a little out of whack.
Like Mike wants to go home.
I know.
And Dave would probably know the answer to this, or maybe Chip. Do these people pay a lot more for fire insurance because they have substantial houses almost on top of each other?
Yeah, that's a good question, Bob. Well, did you hear my fire comment? There
Yeah.
was something in there from Chris Johnson that
Yeah.
said to make sure they're
Yeah.
aware of
I
that.
don't
That was
know.
the side variance.
Yeah.
Well, they also benefit from a certain amount of water that seems to be available for fire protection.
True.
Right, well, that's true.
There you go.
Are you aware of any alternates coming up?
Haven't heard.
Nothing? Who can we recruit? I haven't even
Well,
thought about it.
I'll talk to Shauna, but I may go ahead and send a letter out to recent applicants. Again, I think that's a
No,
pool
because.
of people that, you know, I think either may like the way it works or don't like the way it
Right,
works,
right.
but for either way, you know, I might be interested.
I think the only other thing to me, and I think that's a great idea, Chip, but I really do think we need to address this Zoom thing.
Yeah.
It has been less than stellar for many meetings.
I'm sorry, which?
The Zoom
Oh, Zoom,
issue,
yeah.
and I don't know, I'm more than happy. I just. I don't
Usually
think
they're pretty
there's no reason
straightforward,
for.
There should,
Zoom.
I'm on Zoom all day. I work
Yeah.
for, my company is in, I'm the COO of a company in Texas. So.
That's how you. yeah,
That's how
you-
we work.
Right.
Yeah.
I know I have clients in New
Well,
Zealand.
you
I can't
have
fly
to,
over
in
there.
that case, if you have to.
But
But we
for
don't
pan-
have these issues.
Yeah,
It's
for
just
the
constant.
pandemic or whatever.
Well,
it's-
but so it seems to be there's a second audio selection.
Yeah, I
So
see
that's
that,
where I was, because I had that issue with one of my other computers where, that's why I kept changing the mic and because you had to actually have them both like, or not.
No, see, I
So-
go between my speaker and my headset all the time,
Yeah,
depending
yeah.
on when my mother-in-law watches her soap opera or not. Um, That's a
Well,
whole
see,
thing.
You make a good point. For me, this worked tonight because I'm in the middle of my meds for type A flu. And it's been quite unpleasant. And even if I was at the end of it, I wouldn't want to come in and take a chance of infecting somebody else. I'd wear my mask, but there were only 5 of us, and it would have not been. I don't think it would have been. It would have been awkward if I couldn't have been, been part of it tonight. So I'm glad we have the Zoom, but I'm involved in other organizations that do Zoom, and they don't have as many difficulties, and maybe they've just been lucky. But I don't understand what the problem.
It's
Maybe
gotta
we-
be the audio thing. 'cause
Yeah,
it's
maybe
always
we
the
can
audio.
suggest to the
so.
staff a retraining.
Well, I said, I go, a day of Zoom training would
Well,
be
you
good
haven't been
for.
here that long, so.
No,
Yeah,
no,
well, I mean,
yeah,
they
you
kind of
don't take
trial
any
by
of this
fire, right? I
personally
mean-
at all. This is not,
We
not,
were
oh my
like-
God, Mike really screwed up. On his
We
first
felt
day.
bad for you, by the way.
We did.
Well, we didn't feel so bad for him when we were standing outside.
Oh, that's a thing.
They told me to swipe it twice, I did.
That-
I walked away, and then all of a sudden, Doug's calling.
Yeah.
Sean's calling me. Let them in. I went,
That
Yes, I
happened
did.
that happened one time, a number of years ago. I remember standing out there. and-
Really?
Wasn't quite as cold.
That
but-
must have been the day I showed up at 6.
John and I stood up there once, we couldn't get in.
Really? No.
I don't know what they had.
Well,
Badge consumer. But anyway, the only last thing about the Zoom, I don't have anything against Zoom.
right,
It's kind of like,
it's got
you
a
know,
function.
I had
It's
a
got a
couple of cars that were really,
Yeah, right?
and I was sorry they kept breaking down and I finally just got rid of them. I like
So
the-
there's Dave's analogy for the night, so.
Well, we might ask that Sean or whoever the AV czar is,
See, I
to
don't
maybe
have black
write out a
eye.
list of.
yeah, I'll talk to Tyler, just the other day when I went to run this, couldn't get any video.
Yeah.
Tyler, come and fix that.
They must
Yeah.
have a checklist that works.
Obviously it works for you.
I mean,
Good for you.
Well, I knew when you were, because you were
I was
going to that
messing with them,
drop down.
honestly.
And so I go between the speaker and the headset all the
Yeah.
time. It's in the drop down. You have to pick the right mic. When there was only two
Well, I
and there's
saw-
like 10 speakers, I'm like, there's something not turned on.
Yeah,
Didn't I
right?
told you, there's something.
Well,
not
and
turned
I
on.
actually put that, when that thing popped up, when I changed it, it
Yeah.
popped up, I was like, do I touch it? Do I not touch it?
Yeah.
Because there was two options. I thought if I touch it, it's gonna be all over. So
Now, minutes are gonna be
Button
done
pushes.
from the recording.
you would never guess that about me at all, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
So
Just
just,
we could welcome.
so.
I know.
I'll be chip for that meeting adjourned.
And then as far as the decision
It's not just like.
sheets, I know she printed those out for me.
All right.
So I go ahead and hang
Ladies
them
and
on.
Wearing
gentlemen.
this shirt, this sweater.
I think you should come in next month. Come in and camera. I think that would be great, wouldn't it? I'll come in with all orange.
Okay.
Shannon, you wear all green.
I just want to say good evening to everybody, including the great pumpkin. I've been, you know, I've enjoyed this.
We just had a conversation about it. We're all gonna come in next month different. You'll-
I think I'm
Wear
motion
whatever
to
you want.
adjourn.
It'll look like Chip is by himself, basically.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, all right.
Hi,
Thanks, Bob.
thank you.
Mike.
Oh, thank you.